What's cracking, everybody? In today's video, we're going to be talking about three things: conditions, rest, and advancement. But just a note, this is the last video before the Kickstarter ends, so go tell all your friends, get in on this before it's too late. Anyways, let's check out conditions. All right, so conditions are temporary effects that either help or hinder PCs. They're good or bad. They can do a couple things. The first thing they can do is they can cause or prevent risks. So going back to the core gameplay loop, they can, makes you have to roll for something, or they can like preclude a roll for something, basically. When actions do have risks, conditions can also give advantage or disadvantage on the roll. They can also make certain actions impossible or automatic. So if you've got a broken leg, sprinting is impossible. If you take a flight potion, getting over a small stone wall might be automatic. How do you get them? Really, whenever common sense dictates. So when you use certain items, when you take certain conditions, or as a consequence of an unsuccessful action, really any time where it makes sense, PCs take conditions. The guide describes what it will take to end conditions. So a lot of them just end with time, right? Like, you drink a potion, 10 minutes later it's gone. Others require actions or resources. So like you might have to have medical attention for an injury or something like that. And then still other actions require the completion of tasks. So for instance, if you take the lycanthropy action, you might have to swim in mirror like under a full moon to alleviate that condition. There's a list of examples on the other page, some helpful conditions, some hindering physical conditions, and some hindering mental conditions. So for instance, you can be banged up, which hinders quick movements, lasts for 3 hours. You can take a stim pack, which gives you increases reflexes and speed for 2 hours, but you're exhausted afterwards. That's an example of a supernatural item, so it has that drawback, right? Hindering mental conditions, comatose. You cannot think or act, and you alleviate this by entering their psyche and unbinding their soul. So you can turn really intense conditions into kind of side quests almost, too. Another thing to note about conditions is that they take the place of hit points, right? Okkam does not have hit points. PCs don't lose HP, they gain lacerated sword arm or concussion or gut wound. This is simultaneously more and less dangerous than like HP in more traditional tabletop games. On one hand, every combat and every injury has the potential for long-lasting consequences that make things harder going forward. On the other hand, you can't really die in Okkam, unless of course your group agrees that's on the table, which is covered in what's called the death rule, which we're covering next week actually. That's it for conditions, right? They're essentially anything temporary that is helpful or harmful. They end when the guide says they do, and they can either make things impossible, make things automatic, or give advantage or disadvantage if something is risky. Let's move on to rest. Let's flip through here and go to the rest section. All right. Rest is an extended period of downtime, recovery, and practice. It can range from a few days to several months, basically as long as it takes for them to fully recuperate, reflect on recent challenges, and decide what's next. Rest is not a good night's sleep. It's essentially like the between missions section. Like it's a dedicated time to rest, re-equip, recover, and reflect. You can't just go get into a big mess of trouble and go to bed for the night and expect the benefits of rest. You can sleep a night and that may end conditions logically, they just end with time. But rest is like a dedicated time for breaks. When PCs rest, they restore all spent resolve and exhausted tags and clear any relevant conditions. You narrate how the PC spends the remainder of the rest, and you can decide outcomes of actions and roll dice as needed. So if you've just finished a thing and you're at the hideout for a couple days just kind of recuperating, you can decide how you spend that time, and then if you need to decide what happens or if you need to roll dice to see what happens, then you can do that at this time. And then check for advancement. We're going to talk about that in a second. On this page actually. But over here, just really quickly a note, during rest, the guide can also describe developments in recent relevant plots or faction agendas. So like this is kind of a lot of games that I really love have this like faction turn kind of thing. And this is just a little blurb saying that like during rest, this is the guide's opportunity to say like, you know, okay, you're in town for a week and you rest up, but like when you emerge from the hideout, you notice that there's more guards in the town, or like you notice that the volcano is closer to erupting or whatever, right? Just a note to keep that in your head. Let's talk about advancement. So, during rest, you check for advancement. What that looks like is, if a PC has overcome or survived a major ordeal, you choose one of these options. The first one is just a tag that you use to great effect becomes advanced. It now gives +2 on rolls instead of +1, so you can get better at things by advancing. The second option is you're going to add a new tag to your PC based on downtime training, new understandings, or skills related to the PC's concept or background. This is intentionally open-ended, and the basic idea here is that like anything that common sense would allow your PC to like now say they're good at makes sense. It might be as simple as, wow, like this past adventure I became like really, a lot of things happened that made me like distrustful of people, so I'm going to add the skeptical tag. Or it could be I've been really practicing like this new spell and I want to add it. It's called magic missile or whatever, right? Or it can be something that your character has always kind of had, it just hasn't been listed. So like maybe your character, like your vision of your character is like they've always been good at like cooking, but you just didn't have it dedicated as a tag. You can do that. Just as long as it makes sense, you can add a new tag to your character. There's one other, the third option is +1 maximum resolve. So you can get more resolve. You choose one of these if you rest and you have overcome or survived a major ordeal. Major is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, right? Major ordeal, but like, come on, you know about milestone XP. This is the same sort of situation. Use your best judgment. And the other thing is, as long as you're playing with the similar people, Okkam is a game where it's really hard to go too far out of bounds with like skills. You can't get super high numbers. It's all pretty, well bounded. So don't worry too much about it. Just whenever it seems like the PCs have been through some stuff and come out the other end, advance. There is one other kind of advancement I want to talk about that's kind of off of this rubric. A tag may also become mastered. Confer with the guide to create a long-term goal or ordeal that results in mastery of the tag. So basically, when you have a tag that you want to master, you work with the guide and come up with like a trial or quest. Like, hey, I want to master my fireball spell. What would I have to do? And then come up with like a narrative arc, you got to traverse the Valley of Flame and retrieve the first spark, or like spend 6 months meditating at the Temple of Fire and then survive an immolation ritual. Just like make it big and cool. Mastering tags is a great opportunity to highlight individual PCs and give them like a cool story arc and take everybody along for the ride. Just make sure that every PC in your group is getting kind of like equitable time for this. But when you do master a tag, they give +3 on rolls instead of +2. Last little note, new tags can also be gained in other ways at the guide's discretion. New items, allies, knowledge, and renown must be gained by taking actions in the story. So like maybe your whole group goes through a weird thing and they all gain some kind of tag. Anyway, that's just a little note that says you can do this in other ways. That's it. Rest, advancement, conditions. Next week, we're going to talk about the other miscellaneous rules of the game. There's some stuff on here I want to go through, like death, PvP, the Die of Fate, and some other stuff. That's it for this week, though. As always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!